What's up guys, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be figuring out what's wrong with my Fox body. So if you guys watched my other video a couple videos back, you know that my car started to act up. I had adjusted the TPS on the car. Car was running really good. I went out and I tried to do a burnout. I tried to go out and get some really good footage for you guys, but it didn't work out. Anyway, long story short, after the burnout, the car started acting funny. It just wouldn't idle right. It was up and down. So I'm like, here we go. What did I tear up this time? In that video, I told you guys that we were going to address it. Well, I have not touched the car. Today, we're going to figure out what is wrong with it. I'm going to go ahead, start the car up. I'm going to let you guys kind of hear it, and it's going to be really hard to hear. This GoPro does not pick up the sound of these cars very good, so you're not going to be able to hear the fine details. See if you guys can figure it out and give me your thoughts before we actually get into it. Also in this video, I'm going to show you guys how to set the shifter up on your car. So if you have an aftermarket shifter, I'm going to show you how to set your stop points and all on your shifter, and look at the new bumper for the project car. Anyway guys, let's go ahead and get started. Now you guys might not be able to hear that, but this thing has a really rough idle. Let me see if I can get it to do it. Car's running like crap, so let's pop the hood. Let's look, see what we got going on. Okay, so some of you guys will notice this immediately. I'm not going to say anything just yet. I'm sitting here just counting them off, but I know that is not how this car sounds, so there's something going on. I thought it was the TPS adjustment since I had just changed everything, but no, not so much. But this does lead us into some more conversation. Right here, this is the problem. So I guess when I was standing on the brake and the engine was under a load, I think the engine kind of picked up, and when it did, it pulled out of this pipe, because obviously this is rigid and then the engine moves and flexes. So that's the only thing I can think of. It caused it to pop out. So I'm going to put this back together and see if that fixes the problem. And no, I've not tried it yet. So I just left it like this so we can make this video. All right guys, let's put all this back together, and maybe I'll let you guys listen to some good music. We hadn't done that in a while. I think I'm going to change it up today. Let's do some chopped and screwed 80s style music. All right guys, let's go ahead and start it up. Now that's what I'm talking about, guys. That was absolutely the problem. But why is that? Why is that a problem on these cars when the tube come off in front of the mass air meter? That should not be a problem, right? I'm sure some of you out there know, but I have noticed this problem with Fox bodies for years and years. If you take the air filter off of one of these cars, they run differently. Now I know a lot of guys out there. I know 50 Tucson, when he races his car, a lot of times he uses what's called a boom tube, I think is what he calls it, and he runs it out the headlight hole right here. I think they run great under wide open throttle, but they don't run so good in an idle if you try to take the air filter off. I don't know why that is, because you know, like a K&N air filter is a high flow air filter anyway, as long as you don't oil them up. But yeah, if you don't run an air filter, or you have a break in the tube somewhere in front of the mass air meter, it'll still cause these things to run bad, which is weird to me. Maybe you can do a base idle reset around that and you might be okay. I'm not sure. Anyway, moving on from that, that's just something to note, guys. But it also leads me to something that I've been wanting to talk about with these cars anyway, which is a dirty air filter. You would actually be surprised just how much of a difference it makes when these air filters get dirty on these cars, especially if you have a boosted car, supercharged, turbo, obviously. But these cars do not like dirty air filters. It seems to me that they're really particular on how the air filter setup is, whether there's too much air coming through or not enough. So these inner fender well filters right here are really bad about getting dirty, and then you can't see it, right? So you may have a clogged filter and not know it. Now what that's going to do is cause your engine to just run erratic. I've noticed with a dirty filter, sometimes the car will run good, sometimes it won't. Car's not running good and you just can't seem to figure it out. check and make sure that that air filter is not dirty, or there's not a crack somewhere in the line, or something's not loose, even in front of the mass air meter. It's worth checking out anyway. I thought it was a TPS adjustment, but it's not. My TPS is set right now, I think it's somewhere around like 0.88 or somewhere in there. And the car really seems to like that. Experiment with your TPS settings. You will be surprised. Do not worry about everybody telling you that it's got to be 0.96, 0.99, 0.98. Who cares? You go out there and experiment. It's easy to do, it's quick to do, and as long as you're making, you know, small adjustments, there's a good chance you won't even have to do a base idle reset. So I had a lot of guys ask about the shifter. So how is this shifter holding up? Remember guys, this is the cheap Amazon shifter that I think I paid 40 bucks for. And believe it or not guys, my shifter is doing great, but I will tell you that we have had a failure within the $30, $40 shifter community. So you guys remember Don with the white Mustang? I'll try to show you a little picture or something right here to remind you. He has the exact same shifter in his car. He actually messaged me and said he thought his transmission was bad, you know, was gone. He could move the shifter, but it wouldn't do anything. First thing I asked him was, have you checked your shifter? Because I remember he had that cheap shifter in the car, and you know, there is a chance. Sure enough, he goes out there and the shifter is broken. I've had Pro 5.0s break on me and her shifters break. So, you know, none of them are perfect, but just be mindful. You know, with these cheap shifters, there's a chance that you could have some issues. There's nothing wrong with my shifter, but I'm going to back the stops off on this shifter so I can show you guys how to adjust it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Okay guys, here is your $40 Amazon shifter, or I think they're like 60 bucks on LMR if you have one, and this is how I have it set up. So pretty simple. So you see, this is your stop and this is obviously your shifter. So when you pull this back, you see how there's a little bit of a gap? So you see how it hits that? That's what you want. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to adjust this. But first, before we do, I'm going to go ahead and explain to you just real quick like what it is that this does. So let's say that you don't have these stops in your shifter at all, right? So when you pull this thing back, you could very well pull this shifter back too far. What's happening is it's moving a rod in the transmission, which is moving shift forks in the transmission that change these gears. If you pull this rod back too quick, you're going to put excessive pressure on these shift forks that move back and forth like this, and they're basically cast aluminum and stuff. I mean, you will break those shift forks. The best thing to do is just make sure that it's engaged into gear. Say that's in gear, and then what you want to do is run your bolt up to the base of the shifter. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right guys, I had to swap over to the phone. My GoPro's dead. Aubrey's here, she's gonna help me hold the phone. And look who else showed up, Papa T. So we got Papa T in the house for a little while today. So we're gonna go ahead and knock this out, and I'm gonna spend some time with my dad. So but let's go ahead and talk about how you adjust the shifter on one of these cars. So this is how it works. I've backed these screws off right here. So this is fully engaged, so you know you're in gear. The problem is, you see that gap right there? And if you were to really snatch this shifter really hard, you could overextend this and break a shift fork. So what you want to do is put the car in neutral, pull it back into any gear, it doesn't matter. Make sure it's fully engaged. And then what you want to do is screw this in. You want to have a little bit of room in here to make sure this thing is in gear. So you want to leave a little bit of play. You come up here and you do the same thing. See that big gap? We got to close that up, run it up till it touches, and then back it off just a touch. All you're going to do is put your lock nut back on. Down here, I still have my lower console on. That really needs to be taken off so that you can get an Allen wrench in here a little easier, but you could very easily stick a single Allen wrench in here. These typically are just too large, as you can see. So what I'm gonna do is simply put a pair of pliers on it right here, snug this down. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. This is really simple to do. I do recommend to put Loctite on everything beforehand. So I'll just make a little note of that before we actually get started. But I do recommend putting Loctite on everything, especially up here on these, because they are bad about coming out. This has been a really good shifter so far. I can't really complain about it. If I was gonna go drag racing every day or something like that, I absolutely would not run this shifter, but you know, for an everyday driver, it works out pretty good. All right, guys, so this is the bumper right here. I'm gonna show you what it is that we're having to do. So all we're gonna do is just kind of snap everything back into place like this. And then I'm gonna come in with some self-tapping screws just to hold it in place. I can sit it outside in the sun and hopefully it'll kind of take its shape back. It'll make it a little easier to work with and to get it back on the car. All right, so over here, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You can see how this thing has bowed out over time. So what we're gonna do is essentially pull everything back in and put a screw in it so it locks down like that side. We can leave it out in the sun now, let it warm up some, and these things will kind of reconform a little bit. But let's go ahead and flip this thing over and I'll show you what we've got. This is the bumper. It's actually not in that bad a shape. There's a few broken pieces on here, but we can fix that. That's no problem. See right here, pull this in, weld everything back together, epoxy it, whatever we're gonna do. Overall though, the bumper seems to be pretty straight, guys. So that's gonna be our bumper for the project car. Remember I told you I got the alternator bracket? Well, we have it right here. Obviously we're not gonna use the alternator, but other than that, looks pretty good. Because this is what we want on the car. We don't want all that old stuff, you know, from the truck on there. That stuff just doesn't fit well in these cars. So we'll have to get this bracket and the bracket down there for the power steering, and we'll have to go to the new timing chain cover. We'll go to all that, but for right now, this is what we've got. We've got the fog light covers for this. Now there's a big hole down here, and I don't know what that was, but more than likely we'll just leave that. I don't think you'll see it. It'll be under the car, so, but if we have to, we can fill that in too. No big deal. All right, let's go back here real quick and look at the project car one more time, just so I can show you guys what it is that I'm talking about. Okay guys, this is the project car. I think it's an 89 is what it is, LX. We will be taking this front end off more than likely, so we'll be getting away from the aero style, you know, look on the car. And obviously I'd like to go to 84 through 86 side molding, the GT side molding. We'll see about that. But this is the car that we're working with. Pretty straight car overall. Our whole goal here is to save this car. We're not trying to, you know, build the fastest thing out there, the nicest thing out there. But if we don't do something with this thing, it's just gonna sit here and rot. But I will show you guys something new that I found. This is dented in. I'm not sure if the fender just needs to be picked up or if this is actually raised up. It's hard to tell really. We'll get the hood off this thing, get the cowling off of it, and we'll figure out what's going on with it. I think what it is the fender is actually lowered right here. So I think the fender can be raised up. Right now, you know, it's not the best, but that's okay. Even if it isn't, it'll be a running Fox body, so it's a win-win regardless. All right, guys, that is gonna wrap the video up. And as always, thanks for watching.